Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
James Reynolds always thought of himself as a lucky man. Married for 6 years to Melissa, a dedicated nurse who worked night shifts at St. Mary Medical Center, he'd built a life that looked perfect to anyone on the outside. The suburban house, the well-kept garden, Sunday dinners with neighbors, everything seemed to fit together seamlessly. James worked as a software engineer for a promising startup, which let him work from home 3 days a week. Melissa, meanwhile, had been committed to her nursing career since college, and James had always admired her passion for caring for others. The night shifts were exhausting, she said, but someone had to be there when emergencies happened in the middle of the night. That Tuesday in October, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds threatening rain at any moment. James was at his makeshift desk in the living room, reviewing lines of code, when he heard desperate knocking at the front door. It was Caroline, the wife of Mr. Henderson, the retired neighbor who lived 3 houses down. Her eyes were red, and her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. "James, please. It's George. He's having chest pains, I can't get him to breathe right. The ambulance is going to take forever, they said all units are tied up with a highway accident. Please, can you take him to the hospital?" James didn't hesitate. He ran with Caroline to the Hendersons' house, where he found George sitting in his living room armchair, pale-faced with sweat streaming down his forehead. The 82-year-old man pressed his hand to his chest, breathing with obvious difficulty. James helped him stand, supporting his weight while Caroline grabbed his bag and medications. "We're going to St. Mary," James said as he settled George into the back seat of his sedan. "My wife works there, she's on shift right now. We'll get there fast." The drive to the hospital took 18 minutes that felt like hours. James drove carefully but urgently, weaving through traffic while Caroline held George's hand in the back seat, murmuring words of comfort. George let out quiet groans over every bump in the road. James thought of Melissa, marveling at how lucky it was that his wife happened to be on duty right then. She'd know exactly what to do, knew all the doctors, could speed up his care. When they arrived at St. Mary Medical Center, James pulled quickly into an emergency parking spot, ignoring the "no parking" signs. There was no time to search for a legal spot. He helped George out of the car, practically carrying the elderly man who could barely stay upright now. Caroline hurried alongside them, clutching the bag and repeating, it'll be okay," like a desperate mantra. The automatic ER doors slid open with a metallic sound, and the hospital's familiar scent, disinfectant mixed with something undefinable, filled their nostrils. The reception area was moderately busy. A triage nurse immediately attended to George upon seeing his condition. James explained the symptoms while helping settle the neighbor into a wheelchair that materialized from somewhere. His mind was fixed on finding Melissa. Would she be in the ICU? The ER? His eyes scanned the busy hallway, searching for his wife's familiar face among the blue and green uniforms rushing past in both directions. That's when he saw her. Melissa was in the side hallway leading to the exam rooms, about 15 feet away. But she wasn't tending to patients. She wasn't checking charts or discussing procedures with colleagues. She was leaning against the wall, laughing. Her body was angled forward in a posture James knew well, the one she used when she was completely at ease with someone, when she was flirting. A tall man in a white coat with slightly graying temples stood right in front of her, so close their bodies nearly touched. He said something, and Melissa threw her head back, laughing in a way that twisted something in James's gut. And then she saw him. The laughter died instantly on her lips. Her eyes widened, and James watched the color drain from her face. It was pure terror. Not surprise, not embarrassment, absolute terror. Like someone who'd just been caught doing something deeply wrong. Melissa took a step back, pulling away from the man in the white coat who, noticing her sudden shift in demeanor, turned to see what had caused such a reaction. James felt as if he were watching the scene in slow motion. The man, a doctor, clearly, from the badge hanging on his chest, frowned at James, then looked at Melissa with an expression that mixed confusion and something else. Guilt, maybe. Melissa put her hand to her mouth, an unconscious gesture, and James realized she was desperately trying to think of something to say. James? Her voice came out strange and strained, a few pitches higher than normal. She started walking toward him, but her steps were hesitant. What are you doing here? The question was so absurd James almost laughed. What was he doing there? At the hospital where his wife was supposed to be working? Mr. Henderson, he said, his voice sounding steadier than he expected. Severe chest pains. Brought him to the ER. He paused, his eyes shifting between Melissa and the doctor, who now watched the exchange with growing discomfort. I thought you were on shift. That you could help. I am, Melissa stammered, nervously smoothing her scrubs. I was just talking to Dr. Cole about a patient. Dr. Cole. James repeated the name, etching it into his memory. He looked directly at the man, who was clearly in his mid-40s and wore the faint tan line of a recently removed wedding ring on his left hand, freshly divorced, James thought with strange clarity. The doctor at least had the decency to look ashamed. Is your neighbor being seen? Melissa quickly changed the subject, her voice still tense. I can check on him, talk to the team. No need, James interrupted. Something cold and hard settled in his chest. I think the staff here is very capable. You can get back to your conversation. The word choice was deliberate, and Melissa visibly flinched. Dr. Cole cleared his throat, muttered something about needing to check on his patients, and hurried down the hallway. Melissa stood there, looking like a child caught stealing cookies. James, it's not what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything yet, he said, and it was true. His mind was oddly blank, as though his brain had shut down to shield him from what he'd just witnessed. I need to take care of George. I'll see you at home. He turned and walked back toward the triage area before she could respond. His legs moved automatically, one foot after the other, while his mind began to process fragments of the scene, the terror on her face, their closeness, the way she laughed, the tan wedding ring line on Dr. Cole's finger. Caroline was seated in the waiting room, hands clasped in her lap, whispering a prayer. She looked up when James approached. They took him for tests. Said it might be angina. They'll keep him under observation. She took James's hand, squeezing it gratefully. Thank you. You saved his life. James just nodded, unable to form words. He sat beside Caroline, staring at the double doors George had been wheeled through. But his mind was back in that side hallway, replaying every detail. How long had they been talking? Why did Melissa seem so comfortable, so intimate with that man? And why the sheer terror at seeing him, if it was just a conversation about a patient? Questions began multiplying. James pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his messaging app. He scrolled through his recent conversations with Melissa, searching for something, anything, that now seemed suspicious in light of what he'd just seen. Shift's gonna be long tonight, she'd texted 2 nights ago. Don't wait up. Yesterday, ICU's packed, I'll stay late. Last week, they changed my schedule again, I'll have to pick up more night shifts this month. Night shifts. Schedule changes. Always so tired when she got home in the mornings, heading straight for the shower before even properly greeting him. Small details he'd never questioned because he trusted her. Because he believed their marriage was solid. James spent the next 2 hours there, keeping Caroline company while they waited for news about George. His mind worked in the background, cataloging memories, searching for signs he'd overlooked, the different perfume he'd noticed a few times, the more frequent salon visits, the new lingerie she'd said was on sale, the phone she now always kept face down. When the doctors finally discharged George, it was indeed angina, but stable, with adjusted medication and rest instructions. James helped Caroline get their neighbor back home. George fell asleep in the back seat during the drive, exhausted. Caroline kept thanking James, calling him an angel sent by God. He smiled politely, but the words sounded distant, as if coming from far away. When he got home, James didn't go inside right away. He sat in the parked car in the garage, hands still on the wheel, staring at the wall ahead. The house was empty. Melissa was still at the hospital, finishing her shift. He pulled out his phone again and this time opened his browser. He typed St. Mary Medical Center medical staff and started searching. It didn't take long. Dr. Ethan Cole, cardiologist. The photo showed the same man from the hallway, smiling professionally at the camera. The bio mentioned he'd graduated from Johns Hopkins, had 15 years of experience, and specialized in minimally invasive cardiac procedures. No mention of marital status, but James remembered the ring mark. Recently divorced, then. He kept searching and, after a few minutes on social media, found Ethan Cole's personal profile. Privacy settings were weak. James scrolled through the timeline and found what he was looking for, family photos that abruptly stopped 8 months ago, followed by a long silence, then recent posts with motivational quotes about new beginnings and moving forward. 8 months. James closed his eyes. 6 months ago, Melissa had started picking up more night shifts. Said it was an opportunity to earn extra, that they were offering bonuses for covering the less desirable shifts. He'd believed her, why wouldn't he? He got out of the car and entered the house, his mind now working with cold, calculated clarity. He wouldn't confront her yet. Not without more information. Not without knowing exactly what he was dealing with. James went straight to the home office he shared with Melissa. She used one of the desks for studying and organizing paperwork. He systematically opened drawers, searching for something, anything. He found credit card statements she kept separate. He began reviewing expenses from the past few months. Expensive lunches at restaurants on her days off. A downtown hotel, just one night, 3 months ago, when she'd said she was taking a continuing education course. Purchases at a lingerie boutique, amounts that didn't match what she'd claimed to spend. Gasoline, way more than the commute between home and the hospital would justify. James photographed each statement with his phone. He created a hidden folder on his device and saved all the images there. He returned to his browser and searched Ethan Cole's name alongside Melissa's on social media. He found no obvious connections, they were smart enough not to be publicly linked. But when he checked LinkedIn, he saw Melissa had started following Ethan exactly 7 months ago. The front door opened at 7 the next morning. James was in the kitchen making coffee when Melissa walked in. She looked exhausted, but there was something else, tension, nervousness. Her eyes met his, and she quickly looked away. "How was your shift?" James asked, his voice neutral. "Long, tiring." She set her bag on the counter and went straight to the fridge for water. Her hands trembled slightly. "How's Mr. Henderson?" "Stable. Angina. He'll be okay." "That's good." Heavy silence. Then, James, about yesterday. "I know it looked weird, but Dr. Cole is just a colleague. We were really discussing a case." "In the hallway? Alone? Looking awfully cozy?" James hadn't planned to say that, but the words slipped out before he could stop them. Melissa stiffened. "We weren't cozy. We were just talking. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You were terrified when you saw me." "I was surprised. I didn't expect you there." "Terrified," James repeated. "Not surprised. Terrified." Melissa closed her eyes, rubbing her temples like she had a headache. "I'm too tired for this conversation right now. I'm going to shower and sleep." She left the kitchen without waiting for a reply. James stood there, listening to her footsteps climbing the stairs, the bedroom door closing, the shower starting to run. He grabbed his phone and sent a message to Mark, his best friend since college, who worked as a private investigator. Need to talk. Urgent. They met that afternoon at a discreet cafe. Mark listened silently, about the hospital incident, Melissa's reaction, the credit statements, the shift schedules that had changed months ago. When James finished, Mark wore a grim expression. You want me to investigate? Yes. I need to know the truth. Mark nodded. It'll take a few days. I'll need to follow her, verify her hours, confirm where she really is when she says she's at the hospital. Are you ready for what I might find? James didn't answer right away. Was he ready? Could he really be prepared to have his suspicions confirmed, to watch his marriage collapse? I need to know, was all he managed. Understood. I'll start tomorrow. The next 3 days were torture. James kept things as normal as possible at home. He chatted with Melissa about trivial matters, avoided confrontations, pretended everything was fine. But at night, when she left for her shifts, he stayed up on the couch, staring at his phone, waiting for updates from Mark. The first update came the second night. She didn't go to the hospital. She's at a downtown apartment. Address in the GPS I just sent. His car's here. James stared at the message for a long time. There it was. Confirmation of what he'd already known deep down, but seeing it in words still hurt. She was with Ethan. Right now. While she was supposed to be saving lives at the hospital. The second update came with photos. Melissa entering the building. Ethan opening the door. They appeared together at the third-floor window, standing far too close for any innocent explanation. Melissa laughed, clearly at ease, while Ethan leaned toward her in an intimate gesture that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. James closed his eyes and let the phone drop onto the couch beside him. Nausea rose in his throat. He ran to the bathroom and vomited, kneeling on the cold tile floor. When there was nothing left, he stayed there, leaning against the wall, breathing heavily. The next morning, Melissa arrived in a crisp uniform, telling stories about her hectic shift, a complicated ICU patient, an emergency they'd barely stabilized. James watched her speak, noticing every detail, how she avoided eye contact, how her hands moved nervously, how rehearsed her story sounded. Must have been tough, he said when she finished. It was. But it's part of the job. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. On the third day, Mark called. I've got everything. Videos, photos, schedules. She's been going to his apartment at least 3 times a week for the past 4 months. Confirmed with building management, she's a regular visitor. Signs in as Mel Reynolds. And there's something else. James's heart raced. What? I looked into Dr. Cole. His divorce was finalized 5 months ago. But the proceeding started 10 months ago. His wife filed citing infidelity. She had proof, texts, photos. I got her contact through some connections. She's willing to talk to you. Why? Because she thinks the other woman might be your wife. The timelines match. James felt the world spin. Set up a meeting. I want to talk to her. 2 days later, James sat in a downtown Starbucks, waiting. Amanda Cole arrived right on time, a striking woman in her mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, tired but determined eyes. She sat across from him and got straight to the point. Your investigator told me you suspect your wife is having an affair with my ex-husband. I have proof, James said, sliding his phone across the table. Amanda looked through the photos, her jaw tightening with each image. It's her, Amanda said finally, her voice bitter. I recognize her face. Ethan had pictures of her on his phone. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet. During the divorce, I got access to his accounts. I found this. She opened an image folder. James felt bile rise again. There were photos of Melissa and Ethan together, at restaurants, on trips, in his apartment. Some dated back 6 or 7 months. Others were recent. In one, Melissa wore a necklace James remembered her saying she'd bought herself as a birthday present. When did it start? James asked, his voice hoarse. Based on messages I found, about 8 months ago. They met at the hospital. She was the nurse assigned to one of his patients. Started as innocent flirting, or so Ethan claimed when I confronted him. But it escalated fast. Amanda closed the tablet. When I found out, I gave him an ultimatum. He swore he'd end it. 2 days later, I found messages arranging a meetup. That's when I filed for divorce. Did he break it off with her? Supposedly. For about 3 weeks. Then they got back together. More secretive this time, but not secret enough. Amanda looked at James with something close to pity. I'm sorry. I know exactly what you're feeling. What did you do? After you found out? I gathered every piece of evidence I could. Documented everything. Used it in the divorce. Got a favorable asset split because I proved infidelity. She paused. Are you going to confront her? Yes. But I want to be prepared. Amanda nodded. Smart. Ethan caught me off guard. He denied everything until I presented irrefutable proof. Don't make my mistake of confronting before you have absolutely everything documented. They talked for another hour. Amanda shared details about the divorce process, gave advice on lawyers, explained how to protect assets. When they finally said goodbye, she squeezed James's hand and said, "Good luck. And remember, you deserve someone who respects you." We both do. James spent the next 2 days organizing everything meticulously. He copied all credit statements. Saved all photos and videos in multiple places, cloud storage, USB drive, external hard drive. Printed selected documents. He discreetly consulted a divorce attorney recommended by Mark. Opened a separate bank account and transferred half the joint funds. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. On Thursday night, when Melissa said she had a shift, James simply replied, "Okay." He waited until she left, then sent a message, "We need to talk. Tonight. When you get back." Melissa replied 40 minutes later, "Is everything okay? Did something happen? We just need to talk. You're scaring me." James didn't respond. He turned off his phone and waited. Melissa came home much earlier than usual, just 2 hours later, not 6. She entered cautiously, finding James seated at the kitchen table, documents spread out in front of him. "James? What's going on? Sit." Something in his tone made Melissa pale. She slowly sat in the chair across from him, her eyes scanning the papers on the table. James could see the exact moment she recognized the credit statements, the photos. "I know," James said simply. "About you and Dr. Ethan Cole. About the apartment. About the shifts that weren't shifts. About the last 8 months of lies." Melissa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her hands shook violently. "James, No," he raised his hand. "Don't lie anymore. Please. You owe me that much, at least." Tears started streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. When did it start? And I want the truth." Melissa sobbed. "Last year. October. He was going through a rough divorce. Needed someone to talk to. I was there." "You were there," James repeated, the irony not lost on him. "While his wife was at home, suffering from his betrayal. You were there, being the other woman. It wasn't like that. Not at first. It was just, just friendship. Conversations. And then, she covered her face with her hands. And then you decided to completely destroy his marriage. And then you started destroying ours. Melissa flinched at the blunt language. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Repeatedly. For 8 months. James leaned forward. You know what kills me most? It's not even the physical betrayal. It's every lie. Every shift. Every time you came home and made up stories about patients who never existed. Every time you looked me in the eye and lied. I tried to end it. Several times. But you couldn't, right? Because he was too exciting, too charming, too, what? Better than me? No. It's not about you. It's exactly about me. James's voice finally rose. About me not being enough. About you needing something more. So tell me, what does he have that I don't? Melissa was crying openly now. Nothing. You're perfect, you always were. Apparently not. The silence that followed was deafening. James could hear the wall clock ticking, each second stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, he pushed an envelope across the table. What's this? Melissa asked, her voice barely audible. Divorce papers. I've already consulted an attorney. I have all the evidence documented, photos, videos, statements, witnesses. Proven infidelity. You can sign amicably, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice. James, please, we could try marriage counseling, we could. No, the word was firm, final. There's no we to save. You destroyed this 8 months ago. I just took this long to realize it. I love you. James laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. You don't know what love is. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't look someone in the eye and spin elaborate stories about imaginary shifts while sleeping with another man behind their back. Melissa looked like she was panicking. What's going to happen? With the house, with everything? Division according to the law. I've already protected my interests. The attorney will explain the details. He stood up. I want you out of this house by tomorrow night. You can stay with your sister, your mom, your lover's apartment, I don't care. But you can't stay here anymore. This is my house too. And you'll get your share in the divorce. But I won't spend another day under the same roof as you. Melissa stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. You can't just throw me out. I can and I am. Read the papers? I have a temporary restraining order if needed. The attorney was very clear about my rights. James walked toward the kitchen door, then stopped and turned. Oh, and one more thing. I spoke with Amanda Cole, Ethan's ex-wife. She told me everything. So don't waste your time trying to downplay or reframe the story. I know exactly what you are. Melissa's face went paper white. You talked to her? I did. Lovely person, by the way. We've had similar experiences, after all. He paused. She told me to warn you, Ethan did the exact same thing to his previous wife too. You're the third, Melissa. Or maybe the fourth. He has a pattern, vulnerable women, intense emotional entanglements, promises of a better future. Then he gets bored and moves on to the next. Melissa sank back into her chair, as if her legs had given out. That's not, he loves me. He told Amanda that too. Then he told you. He'll tell the next one. James opened the door. You've got 24 hours. Good luck with your new life. You'll need it. He went up to the guest bedroom, where he'd set up a temporary bed, locked the door, and for the first time in days, allowed himself to fall apart. He sat on the edge of the bed and let the tears come. He cried for the life he'd planned, the future he'd imagined, the woman he thought he knew. He cried for the betrayal, the humiliation, the sharp pain that felt like it was tearing his chest open. But along with the tears came something else. Relief. Clarity. The certainty that he was doing the right thing. The months that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, asset divisions, tense mediations. Melissa tried arguing, pleading, negotiating. But James remained firm. The attorney he'd hired was excellent, and the evidence of infidelity was undeniable. The asset split favored James, who kept the house and most of the joint assets. Melissa received her share, but it was significantly less than she would have gotten in a no-fault divorce. Through mutual acquaintances, James heard that Melissa and Ethan's relationship imploded 3 months after the confrontation, exactly as Amanda had predicted. Ethan had moved on to someone else, a medical resident this time, young and impressionable. Melissa was devastated, realizing too late that she'd destroyed a solid marriage for a man who would never have been faithful to her. She tried contacting James several times, long emails begging forgiveness, text messages sent in moments of weakness. He blocked all channels after replying once, "You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. Don't contact me again." 9 months after their separation, on a sunny July afternoon, James was in line at a coffee shop when he spotted Melissa across the street. She looked different, thinner, shorter hair, less cared-for clothing. She was alone, staring at her phone with a melancholy expression. For a moment, their eyes met through the window. James felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no longing. Just mild curiosity about who she was now, that stranger he'd once known so intimately. He gave a brief, polite wave of acknowledgement, picked up his coffee, and left through the opposite door. He didn't look back. James rebuilt his life slowly. He moved into a modern downtown apartment, closer to work. Adopted a dog, a golden retriever that forced him to get out and walk every morning. Reconnected with friends he'd neglected during his marriage. Started therapy, working through layers of pain and betrayal. And eventually, when he was ready, he started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners, conversations, relearning how to genuinely connect with someone. He learned to spot red flags, to trust his instincts, not to ignore inconsistencies. One autumn afternoon, a year after his divorce was finalized, James was at the park with his dog when Mr. Henderson spotted him and came over to talk. The elderly man looked well, healthy, walking regularly as his doctors had recommended. "James. Good to see you. How are you?" "I'm good, George. Really good. Heard about you and Melissa. Caroline told me." "I'm sorry." James smiled, and it was genuine. "Don't be. It was the best thing that could have happened. Took me a while to realize it, but it was." George studied his face for a moment, then slowly nodded. "You look at peace." "I am," James said, and realized it was true. "Finally, I am." As he walked back home, his dog trotting happily beside him, James thought about that night at the hospital. The moment everything changed. The terror on Melissa's face when she saw him. The beginning of the end. But it wasn't really the end, was it? It was the beginning. The beginning of truth, of freedom, of an authentic life without lies or pretense. It hurt, God, how it hurt, but in the end, it set him free. Sometimes, James still thought about that moment in the hospital hallway. Still wondered what would have happened if Mr. Henderson hadn't had that emergency, if he hadn't brought his neighbor specifically to that hospital, if he hadn't seen what he saw. Would he have kept living in ignorance, believing the lies, wasting years with someone who didn't value him? Probably. But the universe, or fate, or just cruel coincidence, had other plans. And James was grateful. Grateful for the truth, painful as it was. Grateful for the chance to rebuild. Grateful to be free. He got home, fed the dog, made a simple dinner. Called Mark and accepted an invite to watch the game that weekend. Laughed at something silly on TV. Made plans for a trip he'd always wanted to take but never had the courage for. He lived. And that night, when he lay in bed, in his house, in his life, James slept deeply. No nightmares, no phantom pain, no regrets. Just peace. Life collects its debts. Not always in the way we expect, not always on the timeline we want. But it collects. Melissa would pay the price for her choices for the rest of her life, not through James's revenge, but through the natural consequences of destroying something precious for something temporary and empty. As for James, he'd learned the most valuable lesson: betrayal hurts, but discovering the truth, however devastating, is always better than living a lie. And sometimes, when he was driving and passed St. Mary Medical Center, he'd glance at the building and think about that day. The day he went to save his neighbor's life, and ended up saving his own. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.